everybody!
Hey Quinn, guess what?
What, Cadence?
Do you know what we're going to learn about today?
No clue what?
Anne Frank.
Cool.
Luckily, because of Anne Frank's diary, we learned a lot about her.
Let's get to the video. All people should be treated equally, right?
Well, unfortunately, throughout history, there have been a lot of people who have been treated differently because of where they came from or lived, as well as what religion they believe in and practice, or even if they're a boy or a girl.
And believe it or not, this still happens today.
Luckily for us, the incredible stories that people leave behind can be used to educate and inspire people to be nicer to each other, no matter what their background may be.
This is why today we want to educate and inspire you with the story of Anne Frank.
Her real name was actually Annelies Marie Frank. She was born on June 12, 1929 in Frankfurt, Germany. Her father was actually a German officer during World War I. Anne Frank lived in a community made up of both Jewish and non-Jewish families. Her family were not very devout, but they did still celebrate and observe many Jewish customs.
Anne was very outgoing and a spirited child. Anne got into more trouble than her older sister, Margot.
Anne was like her father, who liked to tell the girls story, as well as play games with them. Margot was more shy, like her mother. She was much more serious and quiet. Anne was well known as the funny girl who liked to be the center of attention in school. Her math teacher, Mr. Keesing, referred to her as Mistress Chatterback because Anne spoke so much during class. In 1933, when the Nazis came to power, anti-Semitism, which is a dislike for Jewish people, grew. Anne's family started to worry about their fate if they stayed in Germany. The Nazis made very strict rules for Jewish people. They began first by stopping the places they could visit, then told them they couldn't use any of the shops and even the schools that they had to go to. Edith, Anne's mother, as well as all of her sisters and brothers, moved to Aachen, but their father Otto remained in Frankfurt. Otto was then offered a new job position in Amsterdam. He quickly decided to move and began to make arrangements for the family to join him.
The rest of the family arrived in Amsterdam in February of 1934. Anne was just 4 years old. Anne lived and went to school in Amsterdam and had to learn Dutch.
She made lots of friends and spent her free time reading and playing table tennis.
Otto opened a new business with Herman van Pels in 1938. His business partner Pels had also fled Germany when the Nazis came to power. The Franks and the Van Pels were included in the 300,000 Jews who decided to leave Germany between 1933 and 1939.
On September 1st, 1939, when Anne was just 10 years old, Germany invaded Poland. This was the beginning of World War II.
Germany had already taken over Austria and Czechoslovakia.
Otto started to get nervous. Would they invade the Netherlands too? Otto considered moving again, but in the end, he decided to stay.
In May 1940, Germany invaded and conquered the Netherlands. 5 days later, the Dutch army surrendered to the Germans. Slowly but surely, the Nazis added more and more laws and regulations that made the lives of Jews even more difficult. Jews now had to wear a yellow star on their clothing, and Jewish children could only attend Jewish schools. Jews were not allowed to own businesses, so Otto had to transfer his business to a friend and left his position.
Jews also had curfews. They could not use public transportation or use the telephone.
They couldn't even go to the movies or even sit on the benches at the park.
In the midst of all of this, the Franks tried to go on as normal as they could. On June 12, 1942, Anne celebrated her 13th birthday. One of her gifts was a red journal where Anne would write down her daily experiences. It was actually an autograph book that had a red and white cloth and a small lock on the front. Anne decided to use it as a diary instead. She named the diary Kitty.
Anne loved writing and dreamed of becoming a famous writer one day.
She began writing in it almost right away.
It is from this journal that we know about Anne's story today. Most of her earlier writings are about normal parts of her day in life, but she also wrote about some of the other things in the diary. These were the things that probably didn't seem too important to her at the time, but they have helped us create a picture of what life was like during this incredibly difficult time in history. She wrote about what she ate, the film stars that she liked, the books she was reading, and the arguments that she would have with her mother. She also wrote about being in hiding, how afraid she was and the difficulties she experienced. She wrote about how she dreamed to be able to go outside again. Things only continued to get worse and worse. Many Jews were rounded up and taken to concentration camps. In July 1942, the Central Office for Jewish Immigration ordered Margot Frank to be taken to a work camp.
Otto Frank told his family that they would be able to hide in rooms above and behind the building where his company worked.
The girls were told to pack up what they could.
They had to wear all of their clothes in layers because a suitcase would look very suspicious and people may ask questions. They then went into their hiding place. Anne later named it the Secret Annex. The Secret Annex was above a warehouse. The entrance to the annex was then covered up and hidden behind a bookcase. Anne's father was able to get help from 4 of his employees who worked at the office.
These 4 people became known as the helpers.
Their names were Miep Gies, Bep Voskuil, Johann Kleiman, and Victor Krugler. The helpers brought the Frank family food, clothing, and other supplies while they were hiding. The men and women working in the warehouse did not know about the people in hiding, except for Johann Voskuil. He was Bep's father, also the man who built the bookcase.
The Franks had to be careful and not be caught by the Germans.
They covered all the windows with thick curtains so nobody could see them inside.
During the day they had to be extra quiet. They would whisper when they spoke and walked around barefoot so they could walk softly. At night, when the people from the warehouse left, they could relax a bit, but they still had to be very quiet and careful. The Van Pels family joined just a week later. They had a 15-year-old boy named Peter. They needed a place to hide as well.
Now there was 3 more people in this small hiding place.
Next, Fritz Pfeffer moved in. He stayed in the room with Anne. Margot moved to her parents' room.
When they were hiding, the Franks, the Van Pels, and Fritz Pfeffer had to be incredibly careful to make sure they were not found.
To tell you how careful they had to be, I'll give you an example. They weren't allowed to flush the toilet during the day. They were afraid the warehouse workers might hear them. Anne was hardly ever allowed to open up a window.
As time went on, as they were in hiding, it became more and more difficult to bring food to the group. At times, nothing could be delivered, so they had to go without food for the entire day.
This began to happen more and more as the days went on and could never go outside.
The family spent just over 2 years hiding in the secret annex. They never went outside once. Anne's 14th and 15th birthdays were spent inside the Annex. Amazingly, she was still given presents. They were given to her by other members of the hiding place and their helpers on the outside world.
Among these gifts were several books.
She was also given a poem written by her father, part of which she copied into her diary. Anne and her family heard a rumor that the war was coming to an end. It looked like maybe the Germans were going to lose. They were starting to have hope that they would soon be able to go outside again and be free. But on August 4th, 1944, the secret annex was raided by a German police officer and 4 Dutch Nazis. Following their arrest, the members of the annex were taken to Westerbork transit camp in the Netherlands. Then they were sent to the horrific Auschwitz concentration camp in Poland. They arrived in Auschwitz 3 days later. The men and women were separated. This was the last time that the men and women were to see each other ever again. Children younger than 15 years old were immediately sent to the gas chambers to be killed.
Anne had turned 15 3 months prior. She was spared from having to go. The women, included Anne, were then forced to be cleaned and disinfected.
Everyone's hair was shaved off.
Next, they were all tattooed on the arm with an identification number. The women were used as forced labor during the day. At night, they had to sleep in crowded, freezing barracks.
The camp was crawling with diseases.
Soon Anne came down with scabies, which is a skin infection.
In early November 1944, Anne and Margot were put on transport again. They were sent to the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. The conditions in Bergen-Belsen were terrible as well. It was cold and wet. There was hardly any food to eat, and diseases were very common there too.
Anne and Margot both died at the camp in February 1945.
They died only a few months before World War II ended.
Anne and Margot's mother died at the Auschwitz concentration camp. Anne's father, Otto Frank, lived through the war and returned to Amsterdam. He discovered that his wife Edith died, and once he got back to the Netherlands, he then heard that Anne and Margot had passed away too.
During her life, Anne wrote 2 versions of her diary.
Anne edited and rewrote her diary in 1944.
Her diary was published in 1947 under the name The Secret Annex, but later it was renamed what we still call it today, Anne Frank, Diary of a Young Girl.
Since its publication, Anne Frank's diary has sold to millions and millions around the world and has been translated into more than 70 languages. In 1960, with Otto's help, the former hiding place, the secret annex, opened its doors as a museum.
It is named the Anne Frank House.
Each year it is visited by more than 1.2 million people from all around the globe. These are people who've read the diary and want to learn more about Anne Frank's life story.
Hey, did you like this video?
Hey, did you learn something new?
Then don't forget to
Sub and smash that like button.
and we'll see you on the next Hey, Guess What? Boom!